Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to do a spread in my Life Crafted album. I've already gone ahead and I've cut a page from some craft cardstock using my Silhouette because I created my title in the Silhouette Studio software and I cut that out of the cardstock at the same time. So I've got one like craft colored cardstock there on the right hand side, you can see with my little holy title there, and the other side I'm just going to use a white cardstock base page. Now because I've got this quite small letters in this title and I don't want them to catch on anything in my album, so what I'm going to do is just back the part of this cut file that's open with a little bit of vellum. I'm just using some scrapbook.com smart glue just to kind of go around those little pieces, like those little pointy edges on the ends. I don't want them to catch on anything. I want it to be kind of a bit more durable since it's not going in a page protector, and so I'm hoping that the vellum is just going to stop anything kind of catching on that title and just make sure everything stays nice and stuck down. I still get that like see-through look onto the back. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to put on the back of there. Obviously I'm not really going to be able to do a different layout because otherwise I would be covering up my see-through portion of the title. So for now, I'm just going to ignore that and carry on with the rest of my spread, and I'm sure I'll come up with something later. I decided to pair my craft page with one of the pattern papers from the pattern paper pack from Citrus Twist. I'm using a whole bunch of their new goodies this spread, so I will link anything that I use down below in the description box for you, but there's some really fun kind of muted, to me they look kind of vintagey patterns and colors in that paper pack, and I decided to go with this yellow and white stripe. I'm still on my no pink kit, sort of kick this month. I don't want to resort back to pink, so I'm trying to stick away from that. I'm just not using my kit, I'm using some new goodies instead. And speaking of new goodies, I'm going to go through again another enormous die cut pack. There's always so many in here, and my approach to using these die cuts is pretty much always the same. I take an initial kind of sweep through all of them and put out ones that I think I could use versus ones I know that I'm definitely not going to use, and it just narrows down my choices a little bit more and helps those, I guess, those final kind of decisions. It just makes it a little bit easier because I've got less choice to work with. So this is my little pile of die cuts that I think I'm going to work with. The first thing I'm going to do is just distress the edges of this pattern paper a little bit. Of course, I trimmed the paper the wrong size. I trimmed it too narrow. I wasn't really paying attention, and I think I trimmed it at about 4 inches wide. So you can see the big white stripe of white on the right hand side of that. I hadn't actually intended to do that. I intended to cut it at 5 inches because the base pages I use are 8 1/4 by 5 1/4. These pattern papers are only 6 by 8, so I was just going to take a 1/4 inch off and cut it at 5, which I didn't. So instead of, using another pattern paper, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm going to have that little white edge down there, and I'm just going to build it into my design so it looks like it was totally purposeful. Now before I start adding all of my little die cuts onto my 2 photos, I've got 2 photos this week, both of Lil having a little patting cuddle session with Shane. I'm going to just build up a couple of layers with some extra pattern paper. So there's this really pretty blue and white, again quite vintagey looking pattern in this pack. I'm going to add that, again sticking with my no pink. There is a really pretty kind of pink plaid in there that I was sort of desperate to use, but I'm going to stick with the blue and yellow and add a bunch of different colors in here with these die cut pieces. So instead of adding piles of layers with pattern paper, I'm just going to add a few little bits and pieces with the die cuts. It kind of gives that look of a layered cluster without actually having all of that bulk. Now this is where I'm going to bring that sort of accidental white stripe a little bit more into play. So instead of just creating the layers under my photo, I'm also going to work with the edge of the pattern paper versus the white. So just moved that cluster over just a little bit so that it kind of overhangs the white It just kind of ties it in a little bit more. Now I've staggered my 2 photos because you know I normally work with sort of clusters of 3, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat my title cutout, the die cut piece down the bottom there, as an actual cluster as well. So I've still got my 3 visual points of interest, just 2 of them are photos and 1 of them is my title. I'm going to tie the title in with the other clusters a little bit more by adding one of those die cuts, that really solid black one. It gives it a little bit more weight down there, so even though it's only 1 die cut, it competes quite nicely with the other 2 because it is so much darker than the other patterns that I'm using. Now, when I was sort of creating these clusters, I did adhere just a little bit so that things stop slipping around the page. I have run out of adhesive though, so I'm going to grab another one and then just start layering things up. These never end up being exactly where I had them in the first place, but I'm just eyeballing it as I go. So I've got a couple of different die cuts here. I'm trying to make sure that the colors I'm using echo across both pages. So at the top, there's this, there's a bit of a cheat, isn't it? A very pale pink one that says today. And on the other side of the spread, I'm using that darker red. So they're the same color family, but the visual weight is a little bit different, just to make sure that everything kind of balances out really nicely together. Now I did take this spread over to my sewing machine. I stitched down my pattern paper onto the white cardstock. Then I stitched down each of my clusters just around the photo. I also added a couple of little extra bits of stitching on some of those die cuts. I love the texture it gives it. And I was already at my sewing machine, so it makes just is a really easy way to add the texture in. I'm adding a few final little bits and pieces. I've got some tiny word stickers and some puffy stickers, and then that's my spread all done. You can see here the solution I came up with for the back was to add my journaling in there. So for those of you who wonder why I never have any journaling, I often do it off camera. It's a longer part of the process for me. Today you can see where I put it. I matched up the cardstock, cut a hole where my die cut pieces are, and it fits really nicely. Thank you for taking the time to stop in today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.